All right, so we are back. So I just want to review some of the things we went over on Friday before we left, Thursday and Friday. So we're talking about how people eat in different countries, MDCs versus LDCs. Remember, an MDC is a more developed country, and LDC is a less developed country. And please remember to take notes if you don't remember any of this stuff. We will have a quiz right after. It'll be a short quiz. Don't worry about it. You can always go back to use this lecture for your quiz too. So just remember, in MDCs, we eat a lot of processed foods, things that come in bags and baggies, things that don't look like they came out of the ground. Remember, we talked about that. In less developed countries, they eat foods that look like they came out of the ground, and they tend to be a lot healthier too, even though they're not eating as many calories as we do. So let's talk about average caloric intake. Remember, in LDCs, they get most of their calories, even their protein, from cereals. And in MDCs, we get most of our protein, or at least a third of our protein, from meat. So we eat lots of meats for protein. They eat cereals because they just can't afford it. Meat is very expensive to produce. Because remember, you could either just eat the corn yourself, or you could feed a whole bunch of corn to your cow or whatever, finally eat the cow. But at that point, you could have just eaten the corn. It would have been a lot more efficient. You would have gotten more calories, more food out of it. Remember we talked about where people are getting their protein from. Any of these blue countries that you kind of see up there are up there. There you go. Any of those blue countries are going to be getting their protein from meat. The yellow or the orange countries are getting them from cereals. And if you remember, there were a couple of green countries, like over here in Japan or up in Norway. All right, and then over there, remember, they're not actually eating people. That was a joke. They're just eating fish. All right, remember, the one word I really wanted to know was kilocalorie. It's the amount of energy it takes to heat up 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So remember, a calorie isn't how much food there's in an item, it's how much energy is in that item. So should you be eating lots of calories? Well, if you're burning lots of them, that's fine. If you also remember, the top country that eats the most kilocalories in the United States, number 2 is going to be Austria. All right, so let's see. We talked about the cereal grains. Remember, a cereal grain is a seed from a cereal grass. There are 3 major cereal grains we talked about. First one was wheat, then rice, and then we also have corn as well. And if you remember, that's why we call them breakfast cereals, because they are made from cereal grains. In Asia, they eat the most rice. In America, we tend to eat more wheat. And in Mexico, they tend to eat more corn. All right. I think this is where I left off for my CP geography kids. For my 3rd and 6th periods, we're talking about agricultural hearts. For that. For my AP kids, we'll get to that a little bit later. All right, let's just continue on with what we were talking about before, which is American obesity. Why is America so fat? All right, the most obese countries. If you do remember from Friday, number 1 was Kuwait. Number 2 was the United States of America. Number 3 was Saudi Arabia. Number 4 was Qatar, and number 5 was Libya. We had talked about New World Syndrome, why the Middle East is so fat. Well, they got all this oil energy in the 1970s, all this oil, and so they got money from it, and they didn't know what to do with it. So they stopped exercising. They bought cars. Bought consumer appliances like washing machines, dishwashers, so they didn't have to do all that work at home anymore, and they got fat. But in America, we don't have that issue. We don't have New World Syndrome. We've been a wealthy country for a while now. So why are we so fat? So if you remember, we talked about how we eat so much meat. We eat more meat than almost the rest of the world. Spain, Australia are really the only other countries that even compete with us for how much meat we eat, and we put it in everything. We eat too much cheese, too. We're eating less milk and more cheese over time. Remember, we kind of talked about that. And cheese has more saturated fats. It has more added fats, oils, and dairy fats. And that's where we're really increasing our calories. If you look, we are increasing our calories. From 1970, we only ate about 2,039 calories a day. By 2010, we're eating 2,544. And it's mostly in these added fats and flour and cereal products. So I'd ask you guys, what are we eating? What did we start eating that has all these flour and cereal products? What did we start eating with all these fats? And what I said is that we became a fast food nation. Shoot, that's not what I want to show you, but here we go. Here's another one that shows you as how much more fats we're eating. Look at our cooking and salad fats. Looking at our lard and shortening up there. Dairy fats, cream, half and half. These are all these fats that we're eating from, again, fast foods and lots of dairy products. Even though we're not eating more dairy, we're eating more cheese and more fatty dairy products, more unhealthy dairy products. And then why? Again, fast food nation. We're eating so many different types of fast food. It's become really easy for us, really cheap for us to eat fast foods. I was kind of making the point on Friday. Let's admit it, most poor people, they're probably going to live closer to a fast food restaurant than to a Stater Brothers. That dollar menu at McDonald's is awfully affordable. And so it actually just becomes easier, cheaper, more economical to eat fast food instead of eating, more fresh prepared foods that you'd be getting at a grocery store. This map kind of shows us where we have so many different restaurants. We have a lot more Jack in the Box in Southern California than almost anywhere else. In the Northeast, if you look up there, and by all means, feel free to pause this if you want to take a look, but in the Northeast, they have more McDonald's, more Burger Kings. In the kind of eastern area, more Wendy's. We don't have a whole lot of that out here. So I just think it's kind of interesting, all the different types of fast foods we have in America now, because, like I said, it's just easier for us to get it. I'm not sure if I've talked to all my classes about this, but on the west side of the United States, we have Carl's Jr. On the east side, we have Hardee's. They are the same thing. It's just a marketing ploy. I'm not going to get too much into that right now. But again, just showing how many different types of fast foods we have and how important they are to our country right now. This will be a map that shows where In-N-Outs are, in case you're interested in In-N-Out burgers. They're almost all in California. That's what we're known for. We have a couple in Nevada, a couple Arizona, a couple in Texas, and it looks like there's one in, Utah, a couple in Utah. But these are all the counties that would have In-N-Out burgers. All right, getting back to why America is so fat. And again, if you need to take a break, go ahead, take a pause for a little bit. We're almost there. There won't be a whole lot more today. That being said, are we eating more sugars? And the answer is not really. If you look at the graph I have right up here, you can see that in 1970, we ate just a little bit more than 300 calories in sugars per day. And in 2010, we still eat just a little more than 300 calories of sugar per day. But what you're also seeing is that, see all that yellow area up there? That's corn sweeteners. So we're using a lot more corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, and less refined sugar. So a lot of our sweeteners now come from corn, just because we're growing a lot of corn. This will kind of show you, hopefully it'll show up on your screen. I was trying to show you. Lots of foods that have high fructose corn syrup in them that you wouldn't think. So if we look up here, cornflake crumbs, Oreo cookies, I mean, that kind of makes sense. Stovetop stuffing, Capri Sun, lots of beverages. You'll see all these crazy beverages over here. Coca-Cola, Snapple, I mean, pretty much any sweetened beverage that you like to drink, tons of corn syrup in it. Breads, especially white bread. We put corn syrup in breads too. It's in all our breakfast cereals. Look at this long product of breakfast cereals. Candy bars, breakfast pastries, ketchup. I mean, all these things that we eat on a daily basis just have tons and tons of corn syrup in it. Obviously, even cough syrups have corn syrup in it. Cool Whip, Yoplait yogurt, fruits and vegetables. I don't know what this is. Claussen pickles, apparently they use corn syrup for all that. So again, I'm just going to kind of go through this pretty quickly, but just everything you eat on a daily basis has all this corn syrup in it. So we're eating a lot more of that and less just regular sugars. All right. Now, why did we start using so much corn syrups in the 1970s? It has to do with what we were growing. We started growing a lot more corn, and so we could use corn syrup sweeteners, and it was a lot cheaper. So like I said, Coke, Sprite, any kind of soda, lots and lots of corn syrup. If you look at these sodas we're drinking every day, look how much more sodas we're drinking. In 1947, we had less than, 100 soft drinks per 12-ounce cans of soft drinks per year. If you look by 2004, we're up over 550 if you count diet sodas and regular sodas combined. So we're drinking like 5 times as much soda as we did in the 1950s. That's obviously going to be a problem for us when we're having all that corn syrup and it's making us fat. Again, why are we using corn syrups instead of sugar? Look at this. These are called subsidies. All right, this is an important term. You need to write this down somewhere. It's going to be on the quiz. A subsidy is when the government gives money to any company just to keep them in business. If we think a company is good enough for our country to keep them in business, sometimes our government will just straight up give them money. One example of this is going to be our corn industry. We give tons of money to our corn industry because we realize that if we run out of corn, we're going to run out of life. Even if we run out of all other types of food, corn is one of the ones that's the easiest to grow. We get the most calories from it. And so we just give lots of money to corn. So our farmers will actually make more corn than we need. We end up throwing out a lot of our corn. And it's just so that if we ever have an emergency like coronavirus, like we're having right now, and the farmers can't farm, we're going to have extra corn and we're going to be able to keep this stock shelved at least for a little bit. So that's one of the reasons we're using subsidies. That's one of the reasons we don't have to worry about running out of bread products, at least not in the long term, or at least in the midterm. We might run out of them shortly just because all these shelves are, people are buying all that stuff. But we do have lots of backups of corn. We can produce more food just because our government gives these subsidies to farmers, gives money for free to farmers, just so they make more corn than we actually need. So since we have more corn than we actually need, we've talked about this before. What happens when you have a lot of stuff? The price goes down when you have a lot of stuff. So we have a lot of corn, the price of corn goes down. That's why all this stuff is so cheap. Soda is cheap, guys. Like you can go to Stater Brothers, get the brand, not the brand name, but like the store brand of soda. And a lot of times it's cheaper than water because corn syrup is so freaking cheap in America because we've given the farmers so much money to grow so much extra. So you do need to know that. You do need to know what kind of crops we give subsidies for. Number one is going to be feed grains, as you see up there. Feed grains, that's going to be corn. Number two is upland cotton. Well, we would use that because we need clothes, right? And so we give lots of money for clothes. That's partly why our clothes in America aren't as expensive as you think they should be. We give a lot. Number three is wheat. Number four is rice. Number five, soybeans. These are all things we like staples, right? We need these cereals. We need corn, wheat, and rice. We've talked about this before. This is where most people get their kilocalories. So that's why we're getting all these farmers to make extra. So do we have to worry about like starving during this during the coronavirus crisis? I would say no, because of all the subsidies we have. Again, it might take a little bit for those products to get to the shelves, but they will be there eventually because we have so much extra. All right, that being said, again, almost there, guys. Just stay with me a little longer. I know I've been talking a lot today. But look how obesity has continued to rise in America. From 1960, about 44.9% of us were overweight or obese. By 2009, 2010, almost 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. And again, a lot of it's going to be our diets. Some of it's going to be lack of exercise because more of us are working inside. We're not letting our kids go out to play as much because we're afraid they're going to get kidnapped or something. I think that has a lot to do with it too, but obviously a lot of it's our diets. The corn syrups we're eating, that we're eating slightly more calories, that we're eating more cheese, more fried foods. And again, it's not so much the calories, it's the types of calories. So much fried food, so much fast foods. Not good for us. All right, this is what I was talking about before, a food desert. Now, food desert is a place where you don't have access to a car, and the nearest supermarket is more than a mile away. If you live in a food desert, if you're more than a mile away from a grocery store and you don't have a car, remember, think about how many more fast food places there are. You're going to walk to a fast food place and eat there and get fat. So if you look on this map, you can see all the different places where there's more food deserts. The darker the color, the more food deserts there are. We have a lot more in the South, where a lot of Black people live. This is partly why we have a lot of obesity in the Black community, Black Americans, because, well, they're poor, they live in food deserts, don't have access to cars, they have to eat somewhere, and they end up eating at McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, because they're not as close to a supermarket. And then you have people like me who I live right next door to a supermarket and I still eat fast food just because I like fast food, but that's a totally different issue. What this map is showing is participation in SNAP. SNAP is food stamps. For those of you who don't know, the government will sometimes give more or less money. It comes on like a card, looks like a credit card, and you can use that to get food at a supermarket. So these are the states that have the most SNAP benefits, most people on food stamps. So you see Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana. Look at the South, right? Lots of dark areas in the South. New Mexico and Oregon also have really high participation. But man, look at the South. So when people are complaining about people on food stamps, a lot of times it's poor white people in the South that are on food stamps. I'm not saying other people aren't too, but that's actually the average person on food stamps is a poor white child. Just keep in mind that that's who tend to be the poorest people on food stamps in America right now. All right, here's a map over time that shows obesity over time. It shows the darker the colors shows that you're having more and more obesity. So light blue means very little obesity, dark red, very high obesity. As you can just see over time, we're getting fatter and fatter, and it kind of started in the Midwest, right? It starts with around Michigan, Tennessee, Wisconsin, that area, goes to the South. And if you see in the last date on here, you can see that the South is by far the most obese with the biggest problem. So just watch the South fill in right there. You can see how dark they get. So the South very, very obese. And again, it's partly because of those food deserts that we talked about. They just don't have access in the South to supermarkets, so they're eating fast food. All right, we're almost there. I know I've said it a couple times. We really are. We're like, this is the last slide. So how we've tried to help. Well, the government in the last 5-10 years has required that fast food restaurants and all restaurants put the total amount of calories on all of their items. As we know, calories are just a unit of measurement. Remember, they're how much energy it takes to raise one, I hope you said kilogram, of water by 1 degrees Celsius. Okay. So we're trying to do that. Our healthy lunches at school, we have more wheat lunches, whole wheat lunches. We're trying to do that. If you notice, like if you get a burger, it comes on a wheat bun instead of a white bun now. Trying to have more salads, salad bars, things like that for school lunches. So in a lot of ways, we are trying to combat this. We do realize this is a problem. If you're in my AP class, you realize that this is part of the epidemiological transition model. In stage 4 and stage 5, we start dying more of heart attacks because partly we're just not eating so well. So that's kind of why America's so fat. A few things just to go over. We're eating too much cheese. We're not eating enough other dairy products. We're eating too many oils and fried foods. We're just eating too much in general. Remember, we eat the most calories of any country on the planet. And then also, we're probably not exercising as much as we probably need to, not getting out as much. And I think those are issues too. Eating too much processed foods, right? Too much bread products instead of things that look like they came out of the ground. All right, so that's going to be our lesson for today. Hopefully that didn't take too long. Go ahead, take the quiz, and we'll call it a day. We'll get back on here tomorrow, review why America's so fat, and get started on learning some other stuff. All right, there we go. Thank you.